Good morning. Good morning. Let's try this again. Good morning. Yay, thank you. I'm John McEwen. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Theater Alliance, and thank you so much for joining us for our Cultural Access Summit. I'd like to first give, and all of our speakers today will give brief visual descriptions. So I'm going to give you a brief visual description. I am a white male. I stand about 5'11". I have brown, more gray than I care to admit, hair parted on the side, a mustache and goatee. I have glasses with clear eye frames and bright blue leg frames. And I'm wearing today a checkered, blue and white checkered sports coat, white shirt, white and blue striped tie, navy pants, and navy shoes. So happy to be with all of you today. And also, thank you, whoever ordered this beautiful weather. We just want to say thank you for that. So it's so wonderful to be back at Grounds for Sculpture. For the past 16 years, we've had the good fortune to host this program here at the Grounds. And we're so grateful to Gary Garrido Schneider, Lauren Shepard, Sam Wang, and the entire Grounds family for your amazing support and partnership each year. Thank you for always sharing this beautiful venue with us. It makes the day extra special. And I'd like to ask Gary to say a few welcoming remarks. Gary.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Gary Garrido Schneider. I am a Latino male with salt and pepper beard and hair. Actually, I think more gray than you, John. I am wearing a olive gray field jacket, and I'm really pleased to be able to welcome you all here today. Grounds for Sculpture has had the pleasure of hosting this gathering for many years. It's something that we look forward to. We feel that the work that this community that's gathered here, that the Theater Alliance, that the Cultural Access Network does, is very aligned with the work that we strive and trying to challenge ourselves to continue doing. The partnership of the Cultural Access Network has been key to that work. We're really excited to gather all of you and celebrate really everyone in the room who's committed to this work of making our field more accessible, whether that's through physical accessibility, emotional accessibility, intellectual accessibility. And I know many of you are also allies thinking about how we make access across economic, across racial barriers, and all the systemic barriers that have kept people away from engaging in the arts. And so this is a day to celebrate all of the work here, but obviously we're also going to be celebrating the exemplary work of some of the awardees that inspire us to continue doing the work. New Jersey is really quite unique in having an organization like this. It not only gathers us for learning and celebration throughout the year like this, but also, John and the leaders of this initiative and organization over the years have been really thoughtful about how to really put, when you say like it stops with the buck, right? Like where your budgets define your values. And I find one of the most sustainable elements here is how grants from the State Arts Council require an ADA plan, an access plan, and the work that the Cultural Access Network and Theater Alliance team does to ensure and hold us all to account. And Grounds for Sculpture has been committed to this work for decades. It's part of what attracted me here because of the work I've done as an educator and as an artist before becoming a museum director. So Grounds for Sculpture's commitment was longstanding before I arrived. And yet, we really value the kind of accountability that comes from this partnership because it requires us to continue to renew that commitment and keeps us honest because sometimes there are people who hold initiatives within our institutions, and when they leave, institutional history leaves and focus can leave, right? And so that can be in isolation, then things can disappear. Programs can if there's not an advocate, then the next year it gets slashed from the budget, right? And we have a statewide sort of coalition. So what you're doing here in Gathering is not just learning for yourself or for your organization, but it is part of a field-wide work that's kind of anchoring and holding this work. And so I really want to acknowledge John for his leadership, which I think is unique in the nation for that work. So John. And I know John does not do that work alone. We do that work with him. His team does that. Our partners across the state do that. But he will thank them. Someone needs to thank you. So thank you. With that, I want to really thank you for all gathering today. In this room, there's artwork near the window that is by the artist Michelle Okadona. It is a large-scale bronze cast of a root system of a tree that she found floating in the Hudson River and yanked it out and brought it down here to the Johnson Atelier, which is a sculpture fabrication facility here on Grounds for Sculpture's campus, and cast that work. And it's currently on loan and on view here in this gallery. Unfortunately, you can't touch it. It's quite delicate. A lot of the sculptures here you're allowed to touch, but this one is one that we do ask that, unless it's with a guided touch tour, that it's roped off right now. And then lunch will be in the adjacent gallery with the work of the artist Salvador Jimenez Flores, who's an artist based in Chicago. He's the chair of the Art Institute of Chicago's ceramic program. He's an artist originally from Jalisco, Mexico. The two works on the wall in that gallery are pretty potent in their use of symbols and iconography to tell a broader and more rich story of immigration and migration and labor and movement across the Americas, particularly as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of this country, and the ways it interfaces with the folks that were here before and the folks across the hemisphere here. And there are two additional works that are part of that exhibition that are out on the grounds in bronze. Those you can touch. They are both these sort of hybrid human-plant hybridizations, so they speak to the kind of cultural hybridity that occurs as people move from one culture to another, what they bring, the roots they leave and the roots they put down where they go. One is this very delicate piece of bare feet and the calves going up the leg turn into a succulent cactus, and it's called Caminantes. It speaks specifically to the journey and maybe more directly to the journey across what is now the border between Mexico and the United States. But Salvador's allows, I think, broad readings of the work and broad entry into it. And then there's another work, if you venture out on lunch or after the day, it's a beautiful day out, into the park. There's a large totemic sculpture that has a base head. It's a portrait based on the artist's father, and it also references the giant Olmec, ancient Olmec sculptures in Mexico. And then out of that head grows a giant nopal cactus. Any of you that have roots in Mexico, have traveled to Mexico, know that the nopal is so emblematic of Mexico. It's on the flag, so it's a symbol of the country of Mexico, but it predates that. It was an important plant for a variety of reasons throughout Aztec and Mayan culture as well. So it's very resonant symbol for cultural identity, and it's merging with a wide range of other symbols and literally growing in the grounds. So I encourage you, if you have more interest about those works, to find me at lunch, but with that I will stop and let the day continue. So thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Gary. And I must thank you and everyone here at Grounds for your continued commitment to accessibility. Grounds for Sculpture over the years has been a recipient of the Leadership Award here at this event, as well as the Innovation Award. So thank you so much. For 34 years, the New Jersey Theater Alliance has partnered with the New Jersey State Council on the Arts to ensure that our arts community is accessible to audiences, artists, and managers. We have always had the pleasure of working with amazing access coordinators at the council. Steve Runk, who's with us today, Don Eman, who's with us today, and Mary Eileen Forat, and the council's current access coordinator and program officer, Lindsay Dandio. We're delighted to work with Lindsay on several projects, including the council's community of practice for service organizations, Arts Pay New Jersey, and of course, the Cultural Access Network. Please welcome Lindsay Dandio to say a few words on behalf of the council.
Hello, everybody. And thank you so much, John, and thank you, Gary, for your kind words as well about the council. We're just so grateful for your longstanding partnership and dedication of the Theater Alliance and the Cultural Access Network to help ensure that the arts are accessible to all. To provide a visual description of myself, I am a white woman in my late 40s. I have dark brown hair below shoulder length. Today I'm wearing a cream-colored lace dress with short sleeves and purple-framed glasses. So in my role, I work to ensure and improve accessibility within the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, help ensure that the council's grantee organizations are accessible, and provide support to the field. I'm joined today by several council colleagues and our executive director, Allison Tratner. Together, we really look forward to learning and to taking part in the activities today. From installation of a tactile art wall to the integration of access across policies and practices, over the past year, our state's cultural organizations have made significant progress towards accessibility in diverse ways. An important factor in that progress has been the knowledge, support, and resources coming from the Cultural Access Network, also known as CAN. One of CAN's critical services is to provide educational sessions to help the cultural community get the knowledge it needs to create welcoming experiences. In fiscal year 26, CAN held 6 Access Thursday roundtables on a broad range of topics chosen with input from the field, including expanding access in dance, contracting audio describers, sign interpreters and captioners, creating dementia-inclusive arts experiences, and more. These virtual sessions featured the expertise of peer and external organizations as well as CAN committee members, fostering learning and leadership among colleagues. CAN also provided accessibility awareness training for organizations, continued its audio description and sensory seminar training series for the performing arts, and added a new audio description series for museums and visual arts organizations. CAN's webpage provided a wealth of resources, including its self-assessment survey tool, templates, and instructional videos to help organizations improve their accessibility. And that leads us to this morning's educational program. We're very fortunate to have Valerie Fletcher, Executive Director for the Institute of Human-Centered Design, as well as a wonderful panel filled with cross-sector and arts advocate expertise and perspectives, here with us today to explore the topic of universal access and design. John will talk more about that shortly, but we really look forward to deepening our knowledge around embedding accessibility in all that we do. The Arts Council applauds the progress that New Jersey's arts organizations continue to make. Thanks to the Cultural Access Network and the expertise of its dedicated committee members, we look forward to continuing to learn together and to increase accessibility in the arts. I'm so delighted to be here with you today.
Thank you, Lindsay. So I'm going to take this time while I talk about our session this morning to have our panel, if you could please make your way to the dais, please. And I will utilize this time to talk a little bit about the morning session and introduce our keynote speaker. Strengthening the partnership of artists with disabilities and organizations, marketing and audience development, transportation, emergency preparedness. These are just a few of the topics we have featured in the morning education sessions of the Cultural Access Summit. These sessions are designed to encourage dialogue with each other, learn and build awareness around a specific issue of arts access, and advance our journey towards becoming more welcoming, accessible, and inclusive to audiences, artists, and arts workers. Disability rights advocate Judith Heumann once said, "Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, Inclusion is an action. Belonging is an outcome. They are all part of a universal design. I'm so looking forward to hearing from today's panel and learning about the importance of universal design and access, and thinking how we can incorporate what we learned today into all elements of our organizations so everyone can experience and participate with a true sense of belonging. We are so lucky to have with us today an international leader and advocate for universal design, Valerie Fletcher, who will provide a brief keynote and moderate today's panel. Valerie is the executive director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design. She writes, teaches, and lectures internationally and provides oversight to all of the center's consulting and design services. Her research focus is integrating data from contextual inquiry research findings into design solutions in higher education, public transit, culture, workplace, and healthcare. Valerie's work has taken her to Japan, Singapore, and London. She has a master's in public policy from Harvard and was awarded Women in Design Award from Boston Society of Architects. You can learn more about Valerie's impressive career in today's program. Please help me welcome Valerie Fletcher. Valerie.
Good morning. Thank you, John, and thank you, Lindsay. Where's Lindsay? There you are. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I was actually here some years ago, and it's a pretty special group. There's a level of zeal here that really is distinguished. So it's an honor to be with you today. I'm going to go through probably more information than is easily done quickly, but we will give you a PDF of it so you can take another look if you need it. And I'm happy to do that. So I'm going to fly through. What I'm doing is really setting the table for the panel. And I'll be introducing the panel as soon as I wrap up. But for now, the changing reality of disability, and it has changed quite fundamentally from the old days in the 70s and the 80s when we really were developing the standards in the United States. It is a different world, and I want to share that with you. And I think it makes the case for what we now call inclusive design, and I will share with you why we call it inclusive design. Let me just make sure this is working. Sorry, I also didn't introduce my visual appearance. I'm an old white woman with a short, dark red bob. I am green from head to toe, from my eyeglasses to my pantsuit. My shoes are sort of not quite green, but anyway, you get the basic picture. Still not moving. What am I doing wrong? These things tend to be very sensitive. I might have offended it earlier. Back and forth. Okay, so it should be able to just. Don't go too far. Yeah. Why am I not? What am I doing wrong? You got to James Baldwin, I didn't. Can I have my? I'll click it. We're giving up on the fancy technology, and my colleague here is going to move it along. I am an addict of James Baldwin, many of you may be. James Baldwin seemed to have the perfect phrase for just nearly everything. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that's why these issues are so important. I realize that truth is in trouble in our country at the moment. Truth still exists, and I think we're telling some truth here today. And I want to just honor one of my favorite writers who always says the right thing. Who are we? You've already heard a little bit about us. We've been around for 48 years. Takes my breath away to think about that. And we are global. We are global partly because in the very early days of the universal design movement, and I'll tell you why I use inclusive in a minute, but we hosted 5 international conferences, 2 in the US, 2 in Japan, 1 in Rio de Janeiro. And we sort of stopped doing that because it ate us alive, and it was the only thing that we had time to do. Now we are practitioners and educators. But it did build an enormous international set of colleagues who are a precious resource to my life. We're a very odd nonprofit, and I bet many of you work in the nonprofit field. Throw your hands in the air if you work in the nonprofit world. So here's a freaky thing about my organization. We are self-supporting. We're an NGO that earns our keep. Very odd. We don't do any marketing. It's quite strange. But we must be doing something right if it's working. And we will never send a fundraising letter. Think about how lucky I am about that. Education and training, we are desperately committed to building capacity. We give away everything we know. And today is partly about giving away everything I know so that you have what I have and you can run with it. Our research is, as I trust this group appreciates, always based on people. It is always participatory. We do contextual inquiry research with real people with lived experience of a physical, sensory, brain-based, or chronic health condition. We also run one of the 10 ADA centers. We run the New England ADA Center. We've run that center for 30 years. I know you are probably quite familiar with the ADA centers. Are you? Is that familiar? Mid-Atlantic. I have to tell you that there is no RFP for the next 5 years. I have no idea whether the ADA centers will die at the end of the summer or whether there will be an RFP at some point that will allow them to continue. But that is not good news. So we don't know. We will continue to be a resource for compliant accessibility, but I cannot tell you whether anybody's going to fund that. What do we believe? We believe design is powerful and profoundly influences each of us in our sense of confidence, comfort, and control. I got to tell you, it doesn't mean you have to be trained in design. It means that you have to be able to imagine what is could be better. Functional limitation is common and ordinary. Don't let anybody tell you, why do you bother? There's so few of them. That's baloney. And we're going to go through this. And design matters most at the edge of the spectrum. If it works there, it works better for all of us. Every one of us has a body and a brain that works differently from day to day. And if we've been anticipated, it's going to work a whole lot better. We're going to talk about the edge of the spectrum because that's really the center of what I want to talk about this morning. Who are we talking about? Who are these people? And who might be left out? This is the constant refrain that I am saying to designers of everything. And part of it is just the US prevalence of disability is probably well known by you guys. It's 1 in 4 people. It's one of the highest rates in the world, partly because we count better. Most people don't count very well. I was very involved in the development of the Convention on the Human Rights of People with Disabilities, and one of the primary priorities was start counting the same way from nation to nation. We also do something that other people don't do. We count disability until the end of life. My colleagues in Japan, where I work very closely, stop counting disability at 60. It's great. They have a low rate of disability because they don't count all those old people, the oldest country in the world. We also count brain-based reasons for disability, mental reasons for disability. A lot of countries do not, and that is a huge problem, but it is part of what we're going to be talking about today. And just in case you haven't noticed, we're getting old. And we're going to be getting old a lot faster with a reduction in immigration, who tend to be the youngest people in the nation. So we are cruising towards about 100 million Americans by 2060. And if designers aren't thinking about that as their bread and butter client, they aren't thinking. These are fresh off the presses. The feds are still doing some counting. The most common types of disability in the United States among adults, and this has been true. Cognition is number 1. This is serious difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions. This is the whole brain-based spectrum. This is certainly neurodivergence is part of this, but mental health is part of this. Neurological conditions are part of this. This is the national data, and it is current. It is also important to point out that mobility, and those of you who deal with accessibility know that we have an emphasis that is overarching on mobility. The mobility standards are based on only one type of mobility, and that is people who use manual wheelchairs, not any other kind of wheelchairs. That is a limitation, an inevitable limitation of our standards. It's also important to remember that only 10% of people with mobility limitations use wheeled mobility, that this is an enormous number of people with all kinds of conditions. I noticed a big crowd of scooters to go into the museum. That's because so many people have difficulty walking. And we so frequently ignore that. I was delighted to walk the grounds this morning and see loads of benches. Benches appear to become criminal elements in our built environment somehow, that people have removed them from so many places. And New Jersey pretty much looks like the nation, except you currently have equity between mobility and cognition in terms of prevalence rates. So you're a little different, and you've got, this may be an undercount, but it's just, you're about 25%, you're sort of right at the national standard. And I want to just make a note on mental health. A good part of my life was actually spent in public mental health, and I still worry that we are neglecting people with mental illness. And I want to just draw attention to the fact that the 18 to 25-year-old population, which is a really high-profile population for attracting for cultural facilities, has the highest rate of mental illness in the nation. Hands down, no debate, 18 to 25. It's gotten substantially worse since COVID, as probably isn't a surprise to you. And then neurodivergence. I trust that many of you are dealing with the phenomenon of neurodivergence. Many of you may be neurodivergent. You may have children who are neurodivergent. You certainly are working in a world in which neurodivergence is a rising topic. Is that true? Okay. So we're going to talk a bit about that, because it is something that we're doing a tremendous amount of work on. And the United States is not at the head of this train in terms of sophistication about what they're doing and providing any kind of guidance. And I will help you to get to that guidance. But we're looking at dyslexia, we're looking at ADHD, we're looking at autism spectrum disorder, and pretty much everything we knew about these things 10 years ago is completely wrong. It's just a fact. And one of the things I want to make clear is that there is still a small group in the autism spectrum disorder group who need 24/7 care. Everybody's not going to be a brilliant STEM researcher. And we still have to respect that that is a reality of part of the spectrum of neurodivergence. If you don't know this guide, please download it. It's downloadable for free. Just look up Designed for the Mind. The Brits actually recognized an urgent need for new standards on this population in 2022. They're on the second edition now. And we also have on our website a lecture by, who's actually a global webcast by the author. So you can actually get to all of that very easily. Sensory limitations, really, really important, and certainly important on our panel, represented by leaders in 2 cases with sensory limitations. So one of the things that I'll be talking to Arlene about is that there's almost 50 million Americans with hearing loss. We pay almost no attention to that. Pay attention to the next restaurant you walk in, which clearly is thumbing its nose at most people with hearing loss because you can't hear a thing. Even with perfect hearing, you struggle to communicate with each other. But we don't pay enough attention. I'm going to be querying Arlene about her deep expertise in this area. 3 million people are culturally deaf and use sign language as a primary language. And the big story is that this is getting younger and younger, people who are losing hearing. And it's partly because there are people who spend 20 hours a day with something in their ears. And it appears to be causing a problem. Number of adults with vision impairments is different. We're at a lower number, it's about 7 million, and fully blind, about 1 million. But important that you know that diabetes is the leading cause of blindness in America, something that can actually be corrected if it's caught on time. But these are the big numbers. So the actual numbers of adults in the United States with some type of disability is 28.7. It's big. And we have profoundly neglected the phenomenon of disability in communities of color. We have the best data on the Black community, which is 25%. We also have very good data on the tragic story of the indigenous community, which is 40%. In 1990, when we passed the ADA, it was 40%. We haven't budged an iota. We don't have a good enough data on Asians and Hispanics to be able to give you national data. Whatever we're looking at, however complex the human condition, we really look at physical, sensory, and brain-based and chronic health conditions. And this is a phenomenon of all kinds of, maybe all kinds of reasons, and Secretary Kennedy seems to think he's going to eliminate it, but at the moment, this is a phenomenon of both children and adults, and in some cases, it is caused by our planet, and an unhealthy planet in which air and water are unhealthy and contribute to chronic health conditions. And if anybody is interested, this is on our website. It's a Changing Reality of Disability in America 2020. This is a big issue for us. There's a documentary that's about 27 minutes long that you might want to look at. And when you look at it, if you do, you'll say, my God, 2020 seems like 100 years ago. Because 2020 does feel like 100 years ago. I don't want to take anything away from accessibility laws and codes. This was the first country in the world that recognized design as a civil and a human right. We took the Civil Rights Act of 1963, and we made it into an act that would work for people with disabilities. But we had to add design. There's no design in the original Civil Rights Act. So we were the first place in the world. It is now commonplace in the world. And unfortunately, we're stuck all these years later, 36 years this year. Imagine, just tell me what I have to do is adequate. And I got to tell you, and Michael and I had dinner together last night and had a very interesting conversation about the state of architecture in America. And people are more likely to say, just tell me what I have to do, I don't want to think about it, today than they were in 1990. We're not in a good place. Thinking that accessibility standards and codes are adequate to ensure non-discrimination of the protected class of people with disabilities, I assure you the majority of people with mental health and neurodivergence are people in that protected class. This is not limited to the people the standards pay attention to. Inclusive universal design for all, these are terms that have been around. We published our first book in 1995 called Strategies for Teaching Universal Design. We still need strategies for teaching this stuff. It's a framework for thinking about the human condition, for anticipating that it's ordinary. I would say that in contrast to the standards, inclusive design or universal design really looks more at human experience. This is beyond the idea of barrier removal. It is about experience. We were part of the original development of the 7 principles of universal design. Some people know about those. They're actually in a handout on the table. That was in '97. And I started negotiating to take over this organization just a couple of months later. I still find them useful, and you'll see more information about those in a minute. Why do I use the term inclusive design? I use it, and actually John mentioned Judy Heumann, who is a dear friend of mine, and we had the good fortune of traveling together often. And Judy and I, at one point, we were going to a conference on universal design, and Judy and I decided to do a test whether universal or inclusive worked better. And that's how I began this quest to kind of nail it down. It's too often assumed in the United States to be a synonym for accessibility. It was never intended, I promise you, never intended to be that. Inclusive design resonates with a wide audience who can intuitively grasp the idea. Inclusive, oh, I get it, it's about everybody. Maybe the most important point here is that inclusive design communicates a continuous process of evolving ever more responsive solutions. Who the hell ever heard about long COVID 6 years ago? Long COVID is a profoundly disabling condition. There are more people with long COVID than use manual wheelchairs. I mean, it's these are big issues. Neurodivergence was not a term that we used 25 years ago. And I want to give you something else that I think is really useful for thinking, how do we make this framework practical? We work a lot globally, so the World Health Organization defined disability in a new way in 2001. It doesn't reside in the individual. It occurs at the intersection of the individual with the environment. This is why environment is so important. This is the global gold standard for defining disability. And they basically said functional limitation is a universal human experience unless you are unlucky enough to die young. If you die young, you might get out without a disability. If you live a normal lifespan, you're going to experience functional limitation. That's just a fact. They focused on context, that disability occurs at the intersection of someone with a functional limitation and the environment. And they were smart enough, even in 2001, to say it's physical, information, communication, policy, service, and attitude. All those things together make up a human experience. No user gives a damn whether you're responsible for all those things, which is why when we're doing work with institutions, when we're thinking about culture, we need to be thinking holistically. Our goal is not barrier removal. Our goal is facilitating independence, experience, equity, and participation. And they recommended in 2001, and I got to tell you, I'm in the midst of this rising global trend in 2001. All of us were like, holy shit, the World Health Organization just threw a tremendous bone to us and we didn't even know about it. Not until it came out. It was a wonderful surprise. But it was correct, and it has worked brilliantly for us. remember, context disables or facilitates. It's that intersection. People created the human context, and we can make it better. We have that power. It's a potent argument for why design matters. And we have to learn from people. So just a quick note here on learning from people. And we love this process. User experts, people with lived experience, are experts. We need to go there. We don't have standards for most of this, and most of it isn't going to lend itself to easy measurement. Wheelchair standards are really easy to measure. Measuring neurodivergence is really hard to measure. You really have to go to different things. So part of that resource is to learn directly from people, and it is so rewarding, and it keeps you going. There's just a few images of our user experts. We work with a team of about 400 in our greater Boston area, but we've done this in 6 other countries, and we work all over the country here. So always recruiting people, again, with lived experience, and always paid, both paid for time and paid for travel. And I'm just going to quickly run through the last points, which are this 7 principles. Remember those 7 principles? They are responsive to mental reasons for disability, too. So if we could just quickly go. Equitable use, who could argue with that? Next. And this is another gift. The best case study in the world is actually from the 2012 Olympics in London. Anybody go to the Olympics in London? They were the most inclusive Olympics ever. They had a 450-acre dump in North London, which was a place people dumped everything. There were 25,000 dumped cars in the lake in the middle. This was a bad, scary place. And they reinvented it to be where the Olympics were held. It is a 450-acre campus dedicated to inclusive design in all incarnations, including the arts. There's a new dance theater there. I think we're at 3,800 units of housing. There are 4 satellites of universities. It is a phenomenal place. But they are constantly looking at inclusive design standards. And they have design quality policy, both freely available on the internet. One of the things I make a pitch for today, and I'm sure many of you are already dealing with this, is plain language. If brains don't work, if everybody's brain doesn't work the same, let's really take seriously this issue of plain language. And it's true for people for whom English is a second or third or fourth language. It's also true for people with all kinds of intellectual issues, neurological issues. The next time you're in an art museum, take a look at this, the signs on the wall. And if you don't have a graduate degree in art education, you probably aren't going to fully understand what they're talking about, but you'll pretend. Flexible, next. This is just, in a world in which we have less money to do what we really want to do, this is a project that I fortunately funded with a few bucks many years ago when I was the Deputy Commissioner of Mental Health in Massachusetts. And it was a dancer and a musician came to me and said, we got all these kids with mental illness, and gosh, nobody's doing anything. They don't realize that these kids are a huge opportunity for rich cultural experience. And it started with 30 kids and 100 people on folding chairs. And the most recent event was just 2 weeks ago, and there were 300 kids on the stage, and there were 3,000 people in the audience. Next, please. Simple and intuitive use. We don't design everything this way, unfortunately. So this is something to keep in mind. Simple and intuitive use is a good idea. I haven't met a cultural institution yet, and I must say, having been lost twice in this building this morning, it's probably true here too. Wayfinding in cultural institutions is actually a really, really important thing that makes people feel like you anticipated they were coming. Not to challenge them on whether they could find their way, but to invite them to see what you have. This is you kind of have to purchase this at the moment. They tell me they're going to make a digital copy, but at the moment we work closely with the National Braille Press, and I had them break this book and make us a digital copy because I have blind staff. But this is the best on the market right now. Sign Design Guide and a guide to designing inclusive wayfinding information. But you cannot do a better service to people with all kinds of disabilities than pay keen attention to wayfinding. Perceptible information. Next. This is actually the Olympics in Paris. Paris also made a very big commitment around multisensory wayfinding, and this was led by Okine, colleagues of ours, and I haven't put the URL up here, but they have, and I can happily send it to anybody who wants it, but they actually detail 18 months of research with real people with lived experience of sensory disabilities in order to create a multi-sensory opportunity here with a combination of tactile information, audible information, and visual information, and it was stunningly successful. Tolerance for error. We really wish that things like all technology had a better capacity for tolerance of error, but you've always got humans if you're lucky. I hate social stairs, bleachers, and I attempt to get all of our clients to stop being addicted to these. However, our friends at the Studio Museum in Harlem, anybody been to the Studio Museum yet? It just opened. Okay. So did you go in this room? Okay. So they actually did some really interesting things here. These are not places that are very comfortable, and often people just use them as places to sit and look alone at their smartphone. At least that's the way I've seen all over the world. In this case, they actually created a completely different experience in that every seat lifts up and there's a comfortable place to sit that's padded and upholstered and has a back. Pretty damn good idea. And there are lights that are always on that don't have any glare that allows you to see the stairs. I still don't highly recommend them, but this actually offers some design solutions that are pretty good. Low physical effort, more familiar from accessibility. And just another celebration of bringing people together who are not artists or performers. And I don't know if you know about the A.E. Michelson Foundation. They are primarily and only interested in elders and art. And they have funded some terrific projects. We've worked on some of the museums that have gotten grants from them. But these are characterized by a quality of delight with older people that are a mix of visual and performing arts and people finding their artist self in late life. They are thrilling opportunities. I'd go knock on their door. And the last one, size and space for approach and use. Appropriate size and space is provided. We know this one mostly from accessibility. We'll just give you a simple example. I'm back on the bench thing again. We're currently doing a guide to our state parks agency that is comprehensive and inclusive design guide. But one of the things I've had to convince them to do is to recognize that many people have to rise using their upper body. If you've got bad back, bad hips, bad knees, bad feet, you really need to lift yourself with your upper body. You're very likely to do it. You see the old fellow on the left there rising by having a handhold 22 inches apart where he can really do it independently without the embarrassment of asking for help. Anyway, this is now the standard bench for that park system as well as our transit system. And then last, if anybody's interested in just getting more downloads of experts from around the world on this stuff, freely available, architects get credits for it, but we've got a whole load of these, dozens of them on our website, and we do about one a month. And welcome, I'll put you on the mailing list if you're interested. And here's, we archive all of them within 2 weeks, so there's a lot of them. You can see Design for the Mind is right there. And I want to, I'll just share, I was just on the jury for the International Design Awards for Friendly and Inclusive Spaces for the Union, the International Union of Architects. And just some, we actually awarded things that are quite modest. There's a few examples here. One is a school for children who are neurodivergent in a very cool, cozy places that are tucked in everywhere. An Indigenous health center in Australia, an archaeological museum in Portugal, and one of my favorites is actually this historic courtyard in central Beijing, reinvented to really be a place that people are proud of. And just Juhani Palasma, those of you who may have training in design, Juhani Palasma is a sort of a very influential guy in the world of architecture. He's still a professor of design in Finland, but he is old now, and he has devoted himself to really thinking about neuroscience and how powerful it is that neuroscience has told us that the built environment changes how our brains act. We are designing or implicitly specifying distinct experiences, emotions, and mental states. This is not just about the physical. And that is a thrillingly creative invitation. And I'll leave you with just an invitation involved in the development of this is not the 8th International Conference, but it's the 8th in Europe. But registration is open. It's going to be in Galway in November. But I promise a good time, a place that's pretty easy to get to from those of us in the Northeast. And lastly, we are done. But again, just a closing slide. Oh, closing slide. Sorry. Accessibility and standards and codes, precious, that we did this first. But they're just a baseline, and they're a low floor. They do not get us where we need to get to today to respond to the reality of disability in America. We need to find facilitators. There is no barrier removal that is enough anymore. Just ain't gonna cut it. And inclusive design really focuses on this idea of experience. And if people think this isn't creative, they haven't done it. This is deeply creative and an opportunity for all of us who can imagine what is and what it could be. That doesn't mean you have to have a design degree. So thank you. Now let's turn to the panel. So I'm gonna stay up here and start introducing the panel, and I will do that in the order they are next to me. And they have had the misfortune, perhaps, to have pre-questions from me, which they tell me, who is this woman? What is she? Why is she asking me these hard questions? Anyway, you'll hear some hard questions and some thoughtful answers, I think. But Arlene Romoff, and many of you must know Arlene. She is a longtime advocate for people who are deaf and have hearing loss and a pioneer in advancing accessibility in the arts. Her advocacy helped bring open caption live theater to Broadway and regional theaters across the country. She also serves as a member of the Cultural Access Network Committee, and I have already made use of her consulting. I have asked for a number of her best thinking on a number of people I know who need better solutions. So Arlene, do you want to should we introduce the panel, Michael, first? I'm sorry.
Why don't we introduce all of the panel?
All right, perfect. All right, so you'll hear from Arlene in a minute. And then we have Nimit Kaur, who serves as Disability Services Coordinator and Area Grant Planner for Camden County Health and Human Services. I believe you also created the Disability Services Office at Rutgers. Is that true? That's kind of a big story. So congratulations. With experience of disability services, digital accessibility, and community-based programs, she is a strong advocate for equitable access and inclusion. Thank you for being here, Nimit. And then we have Sonia Stang, who is a licensed clinical social worker with over 15 years of experience supporting individuals with disabilities. I have had the opportunity to meet all of these people beforehand, and I gotta say, it's an impressive group of zealots. She is a licensed social worker with her work focuses on inclusive programming and inclusive design with a special interest in creating welcoming arts and cultural spaces. And my new best buddy, Michael Schnoering, we are getting up to good trouble, I think. Is a partner at Mills and Schnoering Architects, specializing in Princeton, specializing in theater design, historic preservation, and accessibility. He also serves on the boards of the New Jersey Theater Alliance and the Cultural Access Network. I don't know how they get you to give all that time, Michael, but glad you do. So we are going to go back and really query Arlene. So Arlene, shall I just ask you the question and you tell us what you've been thinking about? Please.
Set it up. Is this, turn it on or whatever?
You're live.
This is good?
You're live.
Just leave it like this?
Yep. Listen, you're not very tall, so that's good. Say boo.
Hello?
Say boo.
Boo?
Say.
Okay.
Okay, so in terms of the tough questions, Arlene?
I'm ready for you.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised. Hearing loss is a huge factor in the spectrum of disabilities in America. Your commitment.
When you speak to people with hearing loss, you do usually slow down a bit.
I am happy to slow down. There's such a short time to get this
And part
done.
of having a hearing loss means telling people what you need because they have no idea. And if you don't tell them, they still won't know.
Can everybody hear Arlene? Oh, oh.
There you go.
I think she needs to move closer to the microphone.
Okay.
Get much closer. Can you pull in a little bit?
You don't want to miss a word, okay?
All right. So of course, she's had years of experience, and her commitment to making a difference is a legend in this part of New Jersey. But there remains tremendous ignorance about prevalence and about the options for minimizing negative impact on your life. We need hundreds of advocates like you. We need to clone you in order to break through the lack of awareness. If we gave you a magic wand to explode public awareness of hearing loss, what would you want to do?
Okay. Now, I had to think about this for a while because usually when I speak, are all my ideas, but here's somebody probing my mind. Well, the first thing that would really need to happen is that health insurance should cover hearing aids. They don't. And Medicare should cover hearing aids. It doesn't. However, Medicare does cover cochlear implants, which is what I have. Okay, you have to know that I am deaf. Long story, but a deafened adult, and I got my first cochlear implant 29 years ago. You would think, oh, it's brand new technology. Well, brand new is now about 30 years or so. I was not a pioneer on this, so it was all ADA approved. All right, now back to the question though. I would make all accommodations, have open captioning, like all your movies, just put it up there. And if you do that, you wouldn't believe how many people who would never ask you for it are benefiting from it and don't want you to take it down. Okay, I've seen all that. You would make sure that any meeting room has an assistive listening system, and there are various technologies, but the one of preference for me is a loop, putting a loop system around, and then I just have to tap my T-coil up there, and I would hear everything coming through the microphones. So that's something in all meeting rooms. It's not a big deal. It just requires knowing about it. And this includes libraries, every single library. I mean, it's not brain surgery. It's just a loop. And that would help. Do seniors go to libraries? I think a few do. Somebody is calling me. Oh, I also hear my phone through my T-coil. You don't hear it. You hear my phone?
Just a little bit.
You do hear it? Okay. I'll let it go. Okay, and now the last thing I would recommend is that for all your toys to have some connection to reality, and Fisher Price has been pretty good about this, about representing children or adults with hearing aids or cochlear implants. And so I have brought one today. This is, I keep buying them. They're in Target. There are a whole bunch of little characters like this. You can't buy this from a catalog. It's just in a group. So I keep going back, and it's a little guy here with a cochlear implant in mainstream Target. Okay, it's not for people with disabilities. It's for everybody to play with. So that's my answer to you, my wish list.
And she's giving me the toy. She had to show it to you first.
So we also know how to interact with people. To make up for hearing loss, it becomes an art in itself.
Thank you, Arlene. Open captioning has been transformative not only for people with hearing loss, but for English language learners and for many people whose brains work differently. I can't tell you how many people I've met whose 5-year-old watching open captioning learned to speak English before their parents did because of open captioning. and learn to read English. Tell us what you think the next frontiers are in expanding and normalizing open captioning. And maybe you've touched on that, but anything more to add to that?
Normalizing open captioning just means providing it, like we're doing here right now.
Yeah.
We don't know in this room
Yeah.
who never asked for it, but who finds it helpful, maybe for whatever reason. They missed a word, want to see a spelling, but it's just there. So this open captioning can relate to just wherever you go, like airports or movies. Think about movies, just having open captioning on the movies because they're there. Okay, now I went to see the new Star Wars movie, okay, because they show it with open captioning at very rare showings at times that nobody else would go. So that's the Thursday, not, you're laughing, but this is absolutely reality. Thursday morning at 11 o'clock, okay? And so who's there? There were a few other people. And I asked them, those other people, this is one of the first showings of the Star Wars movie. I said, are you there because of the captions? They said no. They wanted to be one of the first people to see the movie. So they didn't care that there were captions on the screen. Meanwhile, they were good because there was no lips in that movie, okay? 0 lips. So there was no lip reading. And so those words were on the screen because it was universal access. Yeah, so take that to anywhere that you go around. Your movie theaters, Broadway shows, airlines, airports, wherever. You just fill in the blanks. Just have it there, and then that's your universal access for hearing loss.
Thank you, Arlene. One last question for Arlene. It's been a fruitful couple of years for innovation in hearing technology. You've referenced some of the hearing technology that is not new, but still works for a lot of people. Can you share a couple of your favorite innovations?
Okay, my cochlear implant processors now have Bluetooth. All right, so I got you beat because when my phone rings and there's a phone call, I tap this. And now I can hear what my phone is saying, my phone call, and it also picks up my voice. So that's it, one tap. And I don't think you mortal hearing people can do that. So I just say this because I know in this environment, sometimes disability is strength. All right. Also, listening to Bard College does live stream concerts. And that means that on my computer, if I have Bluetooth and I connect to my Bluetooth, that means that my ears are effectively sitting over the orchestra. So I do that, and that is not going to my ear like you mortals. That is going straight to my brain. And so that gives you a real representation of the music. And I wanted to tell you one experience that doesn't have to do with hearing technology. It has to do with hearing, your sense of hearing. Okay, I went to the Metropolitan Opera for the first time about 5 years ago, right before the pandemic, and we were sitting in the that first balcony area, which is very fine seats. You can see the whole stage. You can see the orchestra. I had never been that far away, though. I had always been orchestra front. Okay, so the overture started, and I hear music very well. The overture started, and it wasn't loud enough. And I'm not going to tell anybody I'm having a problem. Just there's so much going on anyway, but okay. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, the orchestra started to sound louder. And then I started hearing individual instruments coming to my head, violins separated and winds, and then finally I was getting the orchestra to my head. Now, essentially, I had never been there. I had with these cochlear implant processors, so I was effectively a baby. We have no idea what babies are hearing, and that's what I was. That it determines that over there, that sound there, no, you really want to hear it. You don't want to leave it there. And I'm telling you this because we don't know a smidgen of what is going on. This is the sense of hearing all on its own with technology to support it, but a baby has brain technology to support it. I'm putting that here because where else can I tell you all this? It was crazy, and it's not that long ago. So this is something to put into the stew. It's not just amplification, but that brain is a very potent instrument, and it's powerful.
Wow.
And John needs new stories from me because we go back a long way.
You satisfied, John? I like that baby story from the Met, yeah. Arlene, you are a treasure, and we do wish we could clone you. And such an interesting story about the new Star Wars movie, that there is an option of captioning, but you have to seek it out, and that there's nothing with lips in that movie. Good to know. All right, we're going to move on to our next panelist, and that is Nimit Kaur. And please, I have questions. Are you good with going with the questions that I sent you? Okay.
Yes.
In your work in higher education and the community, you have extensive experience with issues of disclosure of a disability. First, please share your thoughts on disclosure, especially for people from communities of color. What are the benefits and downsides in your experience?
Okay. I guess you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Just a little bit of a background because I think it will help with my answer. I am blind since birth, and that's my lived experience. And I've used a cane growing up. I currently use a seeing eye guide dog. So for me, disability disclosure is different than for somebody else with a different experience, which is why I always say that it's not just a medical issue. Disability disclosure is complex and completely based on for people's personal experiences, especially when it comes to communities of color or different intersectionalities. There could be the fear of retaliation in an employment setting, for example, fear of discrimination. There's a trust issue. There is just a stigma in certain cultures regarding disability in general. So each person, I believe, weighs their pros and cons and the risk in visible versus visible disability. For me, it has been dependent on the type of experience and the type of place I'm going to. If I'm doing something remote and they don't need to know, I don't always disclose. However, if I'm going to, a place in a physical setting where I will need to disclose, because eventually it will be disclosed because of my physical aspect. So that's a personal preference, and it also depends on, so I come from a background of university settings and also employment setting. Universities, if most of you guys already might know this, universities, especially those who get federal funding, are required or have more of a liability to provide accommodations. Therefore, it's easier in some instances for you to connect and get the resources you need. Most of the students, like me, select colleges based on that experience. Employment, on the other hand, a lot depends on the person and their accommodation skills. So that's where disclosure comes into. When do you want to disclose? Because the discrimination aspect is real and still exists today, and I have had experiences where during or before an interview, I have built myself some tactics when I disclose, and I have seen either complete silence or indirect signs that no, this is not for me. So I think that in the access, universal and design access setting, if we include and if we create inclusive spaces from the beginning, anybody can walk in and doesn't have to worry about disclosing or feeling underestimated or that emotional weight that carries. Trying to make that decision itself has a lot of emotional weight. But if we get the support and if we do disclose, it can open doors to education for other people, better support and access. If it's ideal situation and is taken in the correct and proper way and the support is provided, which I've also seen as well. So I believe it's completely personalized to individuals, but I have seen a mix of experiences with disability disclosure.
Thank you, Nimit. And just to contribute, in our work with clients in higher ed and in the corporate sector, we find that the proportion of people who disclose is only about a third, that about 2/3 do not disclose. So thinking about an inclusive design solution is partly anticipating that reality. One more question for you, Nimit. Art and culture are a multi-sensory experience. You are clearly committed to equitable experiences for people with disabilities, generally, but especially for people with sight limitations. Can you give us one or two priorities that would transform the common experience of people with sight limitations? Let's start with the visual arts.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is definitely a great question, and I thought a lot about this. I have a long list, but to break down, art should not just be, art is often incorporated as a visual experience, but like you just said, it's multisensory. Growing up in various settings and also mentoring various youths who are blind and visually impaired today, I see in many school settings, art isn't always included for not always given the full experience of art for students with disabilities. Because they feel that it's visual and they don't know how to incorporate it. I did have some very good teachers growing up who did make things tactile experiences for me, 3D models, texture samples, and soundscapes. And so what I mean with these list of things, art isn't just about the ability to see or color. Art can go into many, many forms, especially in theater experience, performing arts. Audio descriptions are a major great invention and help tremendously. I have seen various audio descriptions in the Netflix app. And also, if you go to theaters, they're supposed to have those audio descriptive headphones, and some of the time, I believe that there is some level of training and maintenance level required. So if you walk into theaters, sometimes they're not available because they're either out of battery or staff don't know where they are. But if they are available. They are a huge, huge help, and definitely makes a big difference. And also how the audio descriptions are designed. If it's just AI generated monotone, experience versus the audio describer matching the scene of the movie, it's a whole different full experience, which is why I believe multi-sensory version of the experience is a lot better. And if we think about that from a practicality, intuitive, like you mentioned in your keynote speech, intuitive design, we all want practical experiences, not just that ABC compliance legality standard, but just think about any other human being, how you would like to experience for yourself. And that, I believe, goes very well hand in hand with the intuitive design.
Oh, thank you. That was beautiful. I want to make a pitch for not AI audio description in the theater. I like to go to the theater alone. You can't always find somebody to go to the theater with you, live theater.
Yes.
And if I don't need audio description, but I love it. If it's well done, if it's a human being that's doing it.
Yes.
And I feel like I'm not alone anymore. I feel like I have a companion in my ear, and I really enjoy it at a whole other level. So thanks so much. And now we are on to Sonia Stang. And tricky questions again, Sonia, but I trust you're going to be able to field these back. Throughout your career, you have prioritized working with youth, especially young people with mental and or cognitive reasons for disability, including trauma, which we didn't talk about earlier, but trauma is a massive reality. For all the turmoil of the arts currently, everyone is in agreement about the priority of attracting young audiences. What advice do you have about making the arts compelling to these young people?
Well, young adults, right, are a challenge. But I think both disabled and non-disabled young adults need safe relationships. Safe adults, people that they're willing to be able to share what their needs are usually the most important. And I also think really engaging them from the onset. A lot of times, especially working with kids, adolescents, it's the adults in the room in a meeting, usually brainstorming and getting all excited about what this could look like for the students, for the groups. And instead, what I've seen a lot of success with, one of my favorite educators to work with that had exceptional relationships with students, he would spend downtime with them. He would spend the brainstorming, the planning time, the getting to know them time, in between lunches or classes, and then he would know so much more about them. So when he went to try to think of something to do that was, perfect for their senior year, or again, another art exhibit in the school, he had that tap in to the trends, to the actual students, to the young adults and what they really needed. But also he was the voice that they could also share with them when things felt uncomfortable or maybe something wasn't accommodated in a way that was helpful. A lot of times our schools and or other organizational events or spaces get split up into like self-contained, or just the people with disabilities over here, or if you need accommodations, go over here. And that really is the antithesis of inclusive design. And what we realize is we actually would all do better with accommodations or with some kind of thought process and ability to assert and voice some of our needs. So I really feel that young adults really know what compels them to create best. And a lot of times it's more of the safe relationship and safe space for them to really enact their own drama or their own emotions that creates that process of art and art creation.
So well put. One of the things that I'm hearing you say is that building a relationship of trust has untold value.
Yeah.
And that's really what you seem to be describing. Another question, and to consider a specific subset of this audience, adult diagnosis of autism is a hot topic today. It's literally on Newsweek. The whole issue of Newsweek this week is devoted to this. So much so that Newsweek has done it. And it's only about girls and women because that's been underdiagnosed in girls and women. We expect that you know this topic well. Fair to say? What key strategies would you recommend to make these women feel that they are welcome as artists and audience members in cultural communities? Not audience members, certainly, but players.
Yes, definitely. Contributors,
Yes.
for sure. I think autistic women and girls are definitely a really important category, but can obviously overlap with what a lot of us need. We usually need personalized invitations and representation and a personalized environment, or the ability to personalize and control our own experience or environment in that. So I think that, yes, having an invitation that specifically speaks to autism or whatever that segment or disability that you might be trying to invite or engage with is helpful. But I also think giving a really detailed description and understanding of what that experience will be is really helpful. So especially with autism, the sensory experience is just huge. Everything from lighting to crowding to how many people, the noises, the smells. When we talk about art and art creation, we know that paint and pastels and all of these things, they have smells, right? They have textures. They have different, wood chips flying in the air and all kinds of processes that it's really helpful when people have disabilities to know what they're getting into and to know their exit strategies, right? So even if it is, a one-page invitation and you don't want to crowd it with all the wording or anything, maybe putting a QR code saying, hey, we're doing inclusive design for this workshop or series. But then that maybe even gives like a 3D walkthrough of the space that you're using, or maybe lists out the different ways that we can accommodate or ask for different tools that they might need. I think, again, other artistic tools like gloves and headphones, or ways that they can have maybe a more isolated space to create, as well as parallel processes. Sometimes just being an extra body in the room, but not having too many people be there is really important. But I think just appealing to those specific differences can really make a huge difference in the ability to both attract and engage those types of audience members.
Great points, really practical, operable things. One of the trends that's emerging is that in our work with museums, many people are realizing that a lot of their staff are neurodivergent, and that the sensory overload that the staff is subjected to, often for very long days, is a problem and needs to be taken seriously. So part of it is, I think, also a culture of respect, that these are real experiences.
If
Please.
you don't mind me to add.
Please.
I also really do like integrating things like breathing or brain breaks, or having a collective moment of space, or again, just giving a lot of lead up time for expectation setting and breaking, and again, just some downtime to not be so overstimulated at big events.
Terrific recommendation. Even for those that don't think they need it, they probably do.
Yeah.
And on to Michael, my new pal. Michael and I just had many conversations about very real places and how they could be so much better. So, Michael, in your performing arts practice, you are already responding to the lived realities of client spaces well beyond minimum compliance. Tell us about how you build the knowledge in the course of a new project, place specific design challenges that demand design solutions that go beyond just tell me what I have to do.
Thank you for that question, Valerie. It made me think long and hard about the things that we do as architects. And I am an architect, and I will tell you from the start that I, after 37 years, am still learning. And we do not know everything, which is why we have communities like yours to draw experiences from. Projects are messy. Design is hard. When we get into working on buildings, there are two really clear things that happen in our practice, in my practice over time, is communication and context. And first, from a communication standpoint, we do something that's called programming. If you've ever done a project and worked with an architect, you will be familiar with this term. It's, from a programmatic standpoint, you may have, if you run a theater, you have programming on the stage. From our standpoint, a program is how do we facilitate that with the building design. So we're trying to learn everything that we can about you and your mission and all of the things that are required in a building that will serve the program of your building. So we're talking about those things. We're talking about how you serve your clientele, serve the population, people that you want to serve in the future, and that is a wide-ranging discussion. We frequently will bring in stakeholders from outside of your organization to learn about the things that they desire in your organization. And that can be very helpful in understanding what needs to be provided in a building. We are listening, most of all, for the things that we need to hear to be able to provide design solutions for you. As Valerie has said and others have said, access has been treated as a kind of baseline in the ADA. Architects are guilty of this. I have been guilty of this. We are box checkers by nature because there are thousands of things that we need to do. There are other code requirements. There are system requirements in buildings, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structure, you name it. It has to be incorporated into a building. And so by nature, we're trying to make sure that we cover all those things. To address this discussion that we've been having, I think, and there are others out in the world that have already done this, architects need to shift their focus and their perspective. We need not to be thinking about accessibility as an add-on or just another code requirement, which is frequently what happens. Thinking about it as a pure part of the program in how we're going to design a building or design a space, or even how we're going to renovate a toilet room is key to what we're doing. So there's a shift in my practice, there's a shift in other architects' practices of how to do this effectively and try not to think about, again, this as an add-on service. I mentioned context. Context is key. We work primarily in existing buildings, historic buildings, mid-century modern, you name it, things that were generally built without accessibility in mind. And it's very difficult, in my experience, to design things that work in those buildings simply, easily, beautifully, and sustainably. It takes a lot of time. And so just going beyond thinking, well, we need a way to get in the front door and we need to put a ramp in, that is something that I'm constantly probing to figure out, is this all we need, or is there some other way to do this that's going to be inclusive for everyone? Because generally, and again in my experience, the things that are beautifully designed and are integrated in a much more comprehensive way are going to be worthwhile for everyone. And so that's what we strive for. Collaboration is also key. We, as I said from the beginning, we don't know everything. So we have, and you have, a great resource here in New Jersey with the Cultural Access Network, the Theater Alliance. I travel to many states working on lots of projects, and I do not find this organization really anywhere. I haven't run across it yet, and when I describe this experience that we are all having here in New Jersey, I'm usually met with surprise, and how do we get more information about this? And I always turn them on to the Theater Alliance website, John. And John has said, that's okay, send everybody you can. So we do that. The resources are amazing. Other collaborators are our team members. Our audio video consultants, our theater consultants, our acousticians. There's a lot of discussion about sound and noise in spaces, and also the visual aspect of what we're presenting to patrons and staff and performers. All of those things, those consultants bring to the table a special expertise. While we may see 10 performing arts projects in a year, they may see 100. And so they're seeing lots of different things across the country and across the world, really, in some cases. Also graphic designers, very important, lighting designers. We always have a lighting designer on our project teams. Lots of owners aren't thinking about this. And one thing I wanted to say about owners, people who run buildings, this may be the first project that you've ever undertaken. So we see ourselves, and this may get into the second question, Valerie, as educators. We're bringing our expertise to the table. We need to be able to walk owners through how this is going to work and then bring those specific things like inclusive design to the table very early so that we're having those discussions, so it's not just oh, where do we put the ramp? Where's the elevator go? What's the signage going to be? It becomes part of the program. It becomes endemic to the project. Lastly, I think bringing past successes and failures to the table. As I said, I may have said, I've been working for 37 years. I have a lot to learn. We have successes. We have some case studies that we rely on, projects that have worked well, similar things in other buildings, things that other architects have done. There are also lots of failures. In my practice, there are failures, and in things that we see out in the world. So being able to present those things to owners and describing how their situation may somehow relate to these successes and failures is important to get people to understand what the issues are and how to potentially deal with them.
Thank you, Michael. I mean, I think we know that clients often turn to architects as experts. They listen. Architects are often, the educator on a project. But the way you describe it, I think, is the real big opportunity moment that we have today, is that you're really talking about, no, this isn't added on at the end. This isn't a just tell me what I have to do. This is an opportunity to fundamentally alter experience. And why are we doing any design work if it's not about experience? So there need to be more of you, Michael. Thank you all. Please, I don't think we actually gave a hand to you. We've been sorry. Thanks so much. John, turn to you, my friend.
Thank you, Valerie, so much. A round of applause for Valerie. Thank you. And again for our panel. And we do have some time for some questions or thoughts that you might have of the panel or of Valerie. This really, listening to you all, it really opened and kind of re-educated, right, everything that we've been working on together as a field for 35 years. We've been working with the Cultural Access Network and our partnership with the Arts Council. 35 years, right? So it's that, we don't do any of this in a vacuum. It's all about the learning, right? Michael referred to being educating, but we're educating each other. That's why we talk about the importance of advisory boards. You probably hear us mention that probably 24 times throughout the year through our various education opportunities. Please bring people into your spaces, have conversation, and you meet a person with a disability, you've met one person with a disability. We all have unique attributes, unique characteristics. It's one element of an individual, and just because one person has a particular disability, let's just say vision loss, doesn't mean that another person with vision loss is exactly the same as the other person with vision loss that you just met. You need to have conversation. And everything we do about access, it's going to make the world so much better for every single person that you connect with, not just somebody who identifies with a disability. And that if you just think, Valerie, as you said, you take advantage of audio description, right? Because it enriches your art experience. I can't tell you how many times I've been at an open captioned performance and people have walked up and said, when did this theater start doing this? I'm gonna come back. They didn't even realize that they needed the service. It enriched their experience. So I think as Michael said, we don't know everything. We're always learning. It's a consistent journey. And I really thank Valerie and the panel for lifting up so many items today that we need to keep in mind when we think about accessibility, when we think about our ADA plans. So often you think it's always the biggest things, right? There's so many small things that we can do that move us closer to being fully accessible. That's why the assessment tool is so important, because it teaches you what are some of the possibilities. And it's not just those big things that come to mind, but it's always about engaging those that we're looking to serve, always from the beginning. So I'm off my soapbox for a little bit here. I want to thank everybody for the panel for lifting those points up, and just want to see if anyone has some questions, some comments for our panel. And we do have a microphone here that we'll bring around. Anyone?
There's one there, John.
There you go.
Hello. I am looking for the definition of open captioning versus closed captioning.
That's-
Arlene, that's to
Okay,
you.
is this still on?
Yeah.
Okay, open captioning means that everybody can see it. So the panel is in front of the stage. In Paper Mill, they put it on one side, but in Shakespeare in the Park in Manhattan, the Delacorte Theater, they have panels on both sides, but it's open. Anybody can look and see it. Closed captioning means that you have a device that the captioning is on. In the television, that means you control it, you can turn it off, so it's not just available to everybody, it's controlled and not universal. So does that answer what you were thinking about?
We love them, don't we? Captioning, right? Closed captioning on our TVs.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that all of you enjoyed this very insightful and interactive panel. My name is Priscilla, and I am currently a member of the Board of Trustees of New Jersey Fund for the Blind, and I also serve in various leadership boards as well. And I feel that that this panel was very insightful because one of the things that really stood out to me is when one of the panelists spoke about how discrimination still exists in terms of the workplace. And, you know, that is something that is very relatable, especially when it comes for us who have visual impairments, because when we try to disclose, you know, oh, I have to have special accommodations for my visual impairment, and before the interview, you know, they become completely silent, and they, or even that, or they think, oh, how are we going to do this? But going to my question for any of the panelists is, what is the vision that you have, and what do you see, you know, when it comes to future changes in terms of accessibility, where it comes to whether it's the arts or, you know, the physical space or, you know, any other space? Thank you.
Anyone want to take that, or
Sure.
anybody? Go ahead.
Thank you for your question, and yeah, agree with everything you've said. I think that accessibility ultimately, inclusion ultimately comes down to people's respect and dignity. Any space where people are included also means that they're respected and their rights, their not just entitlements, but information is a human right, and you don't have information unless you have experience. And experience helps to build your access to information. So ultimately, it comes down to that respect and dignity part. And I believe that design, not even, not directly, but indirectly, any design, inclusive or not, has an indirect way of communicating who belongs here. And when it's inclusive and has that human connection to it, it opens doors for more people. If you have to plan extra just to get to what you need to do to go on about your basic daily life, that basically that design is saying, well, you are not part of the natural environment. So I believe that once we get to that level of inclusive design and accessibility, where it's just anyone can walk in with easily without having to go through like barriers just to get in or just to do the most basic tasks. No, I don't think it's going to happen overnight. It's probably a long road ahead, but that's my vision.
I just want to add to that a little bit, because I think there is a practical reality. Inclusive design can sound just lofty, like a big idea, and essentially very confusing as to how do you get there, because it is different from baseline accessibility. And I think part of what I wanted to do today was to give you a sense there are useful tools out there so that you aren't perceived as just fanciful, as just aspirational, but a practical focus on there are real things you can do, and you do it as early as possible in a project. But to educate people, I mean, I think there's inevitably an education process. And to build your own repertoire of what are the tools, what are the resources. And I am completely open to any suggestions on how do we make those tools more readily available to everybody, because that is an impediment right now. And I think in order to get to another place, we need to take seriously that we need to constantly learn and to share. Just a thought.
Right. Maureen.
Hi, I wanted to say I really appreciate what people are talking about respect. And one of the things, I'm one of the people that does the evaluation plans, and we talk about the difference between both compliance and welcoming. And that sometimes our goal is to be compliant, right, rather than welcoming. And I think this goes to one of the things in terms of the trainings of our staff. One of the things that I'm always so struck with when I come to Grounds for Sculpture is if there's any challenge that you're dealing with and you go up to somebody and ask them, if they don't know the answer, they know who has the answer. And I think that that's one thing that we sometimes forget in our institutions, is that everybody doesn't have the answers. I work with Mike on the plans, and we always talk about the emergency plans, and people will talk about the big emergency plans, and this light goes off, and this door is open, and we're like, who's responsible for the people? Like, if you just took away the walkers, who's getting that walker back? You know, if people are vision impaired, who is the staff member that's going to go and say, this is where the door is? You know, we look at that thing where you'll see sometimes there's only 3 stairs. Well, those 3 stairs are a big barrier for them. So I think that sometimes in institutions, we don't quite look at what our education is for all of our staff and particularly our volunteers. Who has the information if that fire alarm goes off? Who's the holder of that? And how do we identify the people that may need assistance and what assistance they need? If there was one thing that I would wish for all of our institutions and for all of the people that are the stakeholders is to think about who needs to have the communications. You know, I think about that. As a theater person, I always wonder, God, if that fire alarm goes off, who's going to be there to assist people to do that? And I think that's a place where, as John talked about, our advisory committees, that we have to have people that are representing all the different communities, and it's urgent. It's urgent. If somebody's an usher, they need to know how to be able to assist someone to get out. And that's as important as where the programs go, or, how we tell people to turn off their phones. Yes, everybody has to turn off their phones, but they also need to know how to help people get out of here. And particularly as, Arlene's one of the people that taught me that we're only able-bodied for the shortest amount of time, and then we're in a decline. And so as our audiences ages, and they do at all places, how are people going to get in and out of spaces, particularly as we look at, emergencies and that? So that's one of the things that I would hope for, that we continue to think about. How do we educate every volunteer, everyone who's representing our organization? Thanks.
If I could just, thank you, that brilliant concern. One of the things that in my very brief experience here at this organization is that everybody will figure out what the answer is. And I think we need to all be careful that not my job isn't on anybody's lips, that we train people to understand, solve the problem, because that is never going to work. And I think we have some impact from COVID, in which we've got a lot of people who do not look beyond their individual needs. And this is a big deal. Thank you so much for raising that.
We have time for another comment or question. Yep. Oh, I'm getting my steps in. Who raised their hand back here? Oh, there we go.
Hello. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I was going to ask the panel if you could just speak a little bit more about non-visible disabilities and how that interacts with art spaces, museums or theaters. And also to Michael, I was going to ask you, especially because architecture is in your background, if you could just speak to what that looks like for you, and when you're going through a space, do you sometimes notice things that could be different, and then what do you do with that experience? Do you tell someone, or what changes can be done when you notice those in real time? And just to say, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
Yeah, well, to the second part, I think others could probably.
Speak to the first.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's sometimes difficult. If I know the space and I know the operators, I know the owners, then there can generally be a conversation about what I'm noticing when I walk into some place. I walk into lots of places. I'm sure you all walked into lots of places where you see something that just doesn't seem right from an inclusive or accessibility standpoint. And I think it's important to point it out. Reach someone who is staffing the organization at a particular time, mention it, maybe get the name of someone who's managing, and talk to that person about what you're seeing. Frequently they won't know what it is, and they'd be happy to know what is perhaps could be better about their facility. So I think it's better to mention it and make a little bit of a stink about it than to not say something. So hope that helps.
And I can speak a little bit to the non-visible disabilities and how nuanced that can be, especially comparatively to more visible disabilities. I think the most helpful thing is really just creating, again, that safe space, but you can do that in a myriad of ways, of both with language and calling it out directly, but also even in the structure and or processes of how you engage with art. A lot of times we like to have a task one and the outcome is this, whereas a lot of times, especially with neurodivergence, it's really hard to get to the end task, right? We take a lot of loops and, alleyways and everything to kind of get there. So sometimes if you also have more artistic expressions that focus on the process, or also even focus on the tactile sensations, and that's actually a part of the creativity, that can be a lot more of a welcoming space than something that is highly structured, that is just very generic. And again, a lot of times we usually match our resources like a grant and an evidence-based curriculum, right? And we just put it together and then say, let's pick a population. I think that really doesn't work to draw people out and to really draw them into their vulnerability to be able to create and express themselves artistically. So I think kind of naming and creating that safe container can just be really helpful, but then looking to the different ways that you structure, whether that's engagement or an event or a process, that just allows for a lot more flexibility, adaptation, and inviting the individuals themselves to give that direct feedback so that they have space to ask for what they need, and that the plan for that time being can also always be changed based on their autonomy and choice.
That's great. This is also a good, I just want to mention something about language because it changes consistently, right? So Kat, not to put you on the spot, but I know this is a good opportunity for you to just share about non-apparent disability and some of your own experiences when you've been out and about.
Thank you, John. So I'm Kat Lilly. I'm the Access Coordinator for the New Jersey Theater Alliance. I have a non-apparent disability. It impacts my joints and my connective tissue in my body and causes chronic pain. And what was your other question, John? I'm sorry. Oh, yes. So, sorry, I've been running around doing a million things today, if you haven't noticed. So I'm a little scatterbrained. So just talking about language and how language changes over time, you'll notice that I say non-apparent disability, not invisible disability. We're shifting away from that language, that invisible disability language, because it can often make the person feel not seen. I do have a disability. You don't see it. You don't see it today looking at me, running around. You haven't seen all the pain medication I've been taking and the things that I have to do on a daily basis to be okay. And because that is not seen, lots of times, again, we just feel invisible. We see not seen by people, by doctors. It's hard to explain to somebody that you have a disability when you don't look like it most of the time. And so the language shift has been to say non-apparent disability. I have a non-apparent disability, which in my eyes, to me, it gives me back a little bit of power. The term invisible disability to kind of make me feel, sort of a little hunched in on myself. Non-apparent disability kind of gives me a little bit of my power back and does make me feel seen by people. So that language just changes over time. This is something that has been very new. It came out of the LEAD conference, actually, the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference, which is in Philadelphia this year. I encourage everyone to attend if you can. And it was actually my first LEAD conference, and they were talking about this change in language. And I really latched onto that. I really went, this is fantastic, this is great. And organizations like even the Hidden Disability Sunflower are moving away from using the term hidden disability in a lot of their language. They're now moving to that non-apparent disability language. So this is why it's really important to just keep up with the ever-changing language, to, attend awareness trainings, to attend roundtables. There are a myriad of webinars that you can attend through different, the Mid-Atlantic ADA Center or other places that will keep you up to date on that language, and it just is why it is so very important. So, thank you.
Thanks, Kat. So once again, thank you to this panel and to Valerie. Thank you so, so much for such great, we could be here all day just having this conversation, but I'm holding you. It's between me and food. So we're going to be moving into the next gallery, which is right around the corner, for our lunch and awards program. I also want to just, Valerie did say that she'll share this PDF presentation, such great resources there, so we'll make sure that that gets out to all of you. As we prepare and think about our education sessions for next year, The Cultural Access Network Committee really reviews all of the great feedback that we get from all of you as we think about the topics for our Access Thursdays. So please never hesitate to reach out to Lindsay, Kat, or myself with any ideas as we put those sessions together. We also, as you know, every year we do an education session here at the summit, so we like to hear from all of you. So please share that with us, as well as any resources that you come across. So many wonderful resources that Valerie shared with us are now going to be a part of the Cultural Access Network resource page. So as you come across some things, we certainly would love you to share those with us as well. So we're going to go around the corner for our buffet lunch. If you did indicate that you have a dietary restriction need, please let the folks know at the buffet line of that, and they'll point you to your lunch. If you did not indicate that, don't go to that area, right? So we'll see you around the corner for lunch. Thank you.